This week's apprentice challenge is going to be using blending modes to affect our image. If you already know how to use blending modes and masking, you can actually just skip that. There's not going to be anything spectacular in here. I will offer the one shortcut of changing blending modes and layers by hitting the Shift plus key to go down the list and Shift minus to go up the key, but that's about all I got for you. For anybody else who wants to learn how to use this a little more, let's keep watching here. So I just opened up an image from Lightroom, brought it on in, and blending modes work by having one layer affect the other layer underneath it. And I'm going to duplicate my layer so we get two layers going. Drag it down to the page icon here. I now have two identical layers on top of each other. Your blending modes can be found right above in the layers palette. If I click on this, you'll see there's going to be a bunch of options. And I'm just going to pick overlay in the middle so you get an idea. I click overlay, and it changed the way the two layers interact. It made it darker and brighter, which is what overlay does. And so it's this top layer, the copy, affecting the layer below it. Let's go ahead and back out to normal up here. Back to looking like one basic layer. And let's look at the blending mode options. You'll see this darken, and there's a little section here. So anything in here is generally going to apply a darkening effect to your image. It does depend on what the colors are as to how they react though. The next section down starts with lighten. This is going to basically lighten your image to some extent. If we keep moving down, you can see the one starting with overlay. This is your contrast section. It's generally going to push things in both directions. It's going to darken a little bit and brighten a little bit at the same time. If we move down a little further, you're going to see the comparative section. The comparative section and the last one, the composite section, are a little harder to understand. The comparative section is going to look at two different sets of colors and how they're going to interact, and then it's going to do some crazy things like subtract and divide colors. If you're like me, I don't really know how to subtract and divide colors. I usually stick with numbers, so it can be a little hard to guess as to what's happening. But let's take a little example and take a look around. I have my top layer here, and these aren't going to do much until I change the layers so they're not quite identical. So I'm going to go up to Image, Adjustments, down to Invert, which is Command I, and now we get a crazy look, right? So now if I go down and I'm going to select Difference, I get another crazy look. If I hold down my Shift plus to start cycling through these blend modes, I switch to my exclusion layer, blend mode, and subtract and divide. Like I said, hard to predict, but it's easy to cycle through and sort of see what something does. I'm going to go back to normal, and we still have our crazy layer, so I'm going to hit Command I to uninvert it, and we're back to our starting position. That last section down at the bottom, your composite section, let's go ahead and see what that one does. Grab a shape tool, and I'm just going to drag a shape over one of the leaves here. Alright, so I just drop a red block on it. Go down to Hue, and I'm on the red block layer, and you'll see what that does. A little easier to understand on this one. So what Hue does is it basically applies the color of the top layer, but keeps the saturation and the luminance of the layer below it. The other layers will all basically work at different parts of the same thing. It might keep saturation from one layer, it might keep luminance from one layer, and it doesn't always do just the top and the bottom. It moves around a little bit differently. But once again, if you want to see what they do, hit Shift plus and cycle through, and now you've seen what happens there. Alright, well, we don't need this layer. I'm going to drag it to the garbage can, delete it back out. I'm back to my original two layers here. So if I were going to play with this photo and I want to just use a blending mode, and you can make this lesson or challenge as hard as you want or as easy as you want. So all I'm going to do is go ahead, I'm going to jump down to darken, and we're going to see what that does. Nothing happened. Okay, so let's hit Shift plus. Okay, multiply did something. Don't mind that too much. Color burn, a little funkier. I actually sort of like that. So I'm going to go, but I don't want to apply the effect everywhere. I want to apply it to part of my image. So I'm going to go ahead and apply a layer mask. Layer masks are right here on the bottom. And you see I get a new white square. And on a layer mask, if it's white, it's showing everything through. If I think of it in terms of if the lights are on, I see everything, and it's bright white. If I were to have filled it with black over here, which I'm going to fill with Command backspace, Command delete. You see I got a black square in here. So now the lights are off, it's a black square, and I can't see anything, so I see none of the color burn effect, which is actually what I want in this case. So I want to paint in what I want to see. So I'm going to go and get my brush, and the brush is the B key for your shortcut. I check out my brush size. I want my hardness where it was on soft, so I get a nice feathery edge. Pretty large brush is good. Opacity, I have it 60 right now. I can drag this up or down, but I can also use a keyboard shortcut. If I just hit the number 8, it jumps me right to 80%. Come on down, and I want the back part to be darker. So I'm just going to drag across here real quick. There we go. Darken up the back part of the left side of the image. Fairly happy with that. Looks good enough to keep moving on. So since I darkened part, let's go ahead and brighten the other part. I'm going to duplicate my background layer again. And this time I can jump down to the lighten section because I know I want it brighter. And guess what? Lighten didn't do anything. If I hit Shift plus, oh, here's a big mistake I always make. My brush is still activated, and up top I have blend modes just for my brush. So if I hit Shift plus and Shift minus, it's changing the blend modes of the tool before it does the layer. So I need to go back to my move tool or a tool without blend modes first. Now if I hit Shift plus, you'll see it's changing my layer blend modes over here. So screen, okay. Color dodge. Color dodge I like a little more. So I want to once again apply it to part of my image. Go down my layer mask. Last time we clicked on it and got a white layer mask where I saw everything. If you hold Option down and click your layer mask, it fills it in with black, and I start off not seeing anything, which is what I want. Grab my brush tool. This is over here. I'm going to hit the B key and grab my brush tool that way. I think I want my opacity a little lower than 80%, so remember your keyboard changes that. I'm going to hit 6. You'll see it adjusts me to 60%. And my color is set to white, which means I'm going to paint in what I want to see. And I am just going to drag this right on in. I'll highlight on that one. Grab these little dots there. All right, and so now I have everything brought in. But maybe I look at it and go, you know what? It's actually a little dark. I want to go up to my opacity on the layer. I can affect the whole layer. Just drag that down just a hair. About 85 is good. And you know what? It's a little bright. Drag it down just a little bit to 90. And there we go. I would probably stop there. I got a nice effect. I have a darker part, a brighter part. Everything worked out pretty well. But you can also have lots of fun when you're using this too. If I want to push it a little further, I grab my background. I'm going to hit Command J to copy it this time instead of going down to the page icon. So Command J jumps it, copies it to a new layer. And maybe I want to do an effect on this one. So I'm going to go up to my filter. Let's go down to blur, to radial blur. And let's make it crazy and spin it in a circle. Let's just try 12 and see what it looks like. All right, so that's sort of funky. Got a spin on it. I actually want it behind my bottom layer. My bottom layer is still locked though, so I need to unlock it by double clicking. It says I want to name it. I can name it something. I'm just going to OK though. It's now layer 0, but it is now unlocked, so I can move it above the spinning layer. And if I go in, and now I can't see anything, so I want to go into a blend mode. And let's just hit darken. And you can see a little bit pops through. I can hit Shift plus. And honestly, this, the brush got me again. Go back up. Normal there. Move tool. And Shift plus. That I sort of like. And you just keep working your way through. Right? Say you cycle all the way through and you're going, you know what? None of these work for me. Guess what? Just delete it. It's okay. You don't have to do anything. So there we go. Have fun. Grab things. Put colors over stuff and blend it. Put filter on something and blend it. Duplicate layers and blend it. Mask things in and out. Totally up to you. As hard or as easy as you want this to be. For the basic one, just duplicate any image you have and try a different blend mode on it. It can do a lot for you. I'm looking forward to seeing what you guys come up with.